Imagine walking down the street and seeing yourself. Same face, same eyes, same smile. History calls them doppelgangers, but in every story, meeting your double never ends well. From presidents to poets, and even modern-day murder cases, these are the creepiest real-life doppelganger encounters ever recorded. Let's dive in. Story 1. The German Doppelgänger Murder. In 2022, a 23-year-old woman named Shahraban K. from Ingolstadt, Germany, was desperate to escape her troubled personal life. Reports suggest she was in conflict with her family and wanted to vanish completely. But how do you disappear in the age of smartphones, cameras, and digital footprints? Investigators say Shahraban came up with a sinister plan. She began combing Instagram, looking for young women who looked strikingly similar to her. Same long dark hair, same features, same style. Eventually, she found her target, a 23-year-old woman named Khadija, a beauty blogger. Shahraban and her boyfriend lured Khadija into a meeting under the pretense of friendship. Tragically, the encounter turned fatal. Police allege that Khadija was killed and left in Shahraban's car, staged to look like Shahraban herself had died. The plan unraveled quickly. Forensic evidence didn't match, and investigators soon realized the body was not Shahraban at all. Instead, they uncovered a shocking plot. Shahraban had tried to fake her own death using her lookalike. The press called it the Doppelgänger Murder. And in 2024, a German court sentenced Shahraban and her accomplice to life in prison. A chilling reminder, sometimes your double doesn't just exist. Sometimes they're hunted. Story 2. The Poisoned Cheesecake Lookalike. Now let's jump to New York City, where another doppelganger story unfolded. One so bizarre, it sounds like a crime novel. In 2016, a woman named Victoria Nasarova invited her neighbor, Olga Zvik, over to her home in Queens. Victoria offered cheesecake, rich, creamy, irresistible. But what Olga didn't know was that the slices were laced with a powerful sedative. Soon after eating, Olga collapsed. Victoria left her unconscious on the bed, pills scattered nearby to make it look like a suicide attempt. But Olga miraculously survived. When investigators searched the home, they discovered something strange. Victoria had stolen Olga's passport, her work permit, and other identifying documents. The motive? The two women looked remarkably similar. Victoria, an immigrant facing legal trouble, had allegedly plotted to kill her neighbor and assume her identity. In 2023, a jury convicted her, and she was sentenced to 21 years in prison. It became known as the Cheesecake Murder Attempt, a story where dessert turned deadly and a woman's double became her intended replacement. Story 3. The Wrong Man in Prison. Not every doppelganger case ends in violence. Some simply prove how dangerous a familiar face can be. In Kansas, 1999, a man named Richard Jones was arrested for a robbery he swore he didn't commit. Witnesses confidently picked him out of a lineup. He was convicted and sentenced to more than 19 years in prison. But Jones insisted he was innocent. For nearly 2 decades, he lived behind bars until something extraordinary happened. Another inmate arrived at the same prison. His name was Ricky, and he looked almost exactly like Richard. The resemblance was uncanny. Same skin tone, same facial structure, same hairstyle. Even prison guards mixed them up. When Jones's lawyers presented the evidence, witnesses admitted they might have mistaken the men. Richard Jones was finally exonerated after 17 years. This wasn't a supernatural omen. It wasn't a ghostly vision. It was the terrifying reality of what can happen when your freedom depends on appearances and someone else shares your face. Story 4. Percy Shelley's Death Omen. The idea of doppelgangers as harbingers of death is centuries old. One of the most famous accounts comes from the poet Percy Shelley. Shelley, husband of Mary Shelley, the author of Frankenstein, was plagued by strange visions. According to Mary, Percy once saw his own double standing silently before him. In another instance, his apparition appeared pointing toward the sea. Weeks later, in 1822, Shelley drowned in a boating accident off the coast of Italy. He was just 29 years old. For Mary, the connection was undeniable. Percy had seen his own double, and it had foretold his death. Story 5. Abraham Lincoln's Mirror Vision. Even U.S. presidents were not immune to the uncanny. Shortly after his election in 1860, Abraham Lincoln looked into a mirror and saw something strange. Not one face, but two. One was his own. The other appeared ghostly pale, almost corpse-like. He told his wife, Mary Todd, who was deeply superstitious. She believed the pale double was an omen. Lincoln would win a second term, but the vision meant he would not live to complete it. In 1865, after his re-election, Lincoln was assassinated at Ford's Theater. For many, the mirror vision has been remembered as a chilling prophecy. Story 6. The Case of Émilie Sagée. But perhaps the most unsettling doppelganger tale comes from 19th century Latvia. A French teacher named Émilie Sagée worked at a prestigious girls' school. Students began reporting something bizarre. While Sagée taught at the blackboard, a second Sagée appeared beside her, silently mimicking her movements. Other times, her double appeared sitting quietly while the real Sagée worked elsewhere. Nearly 40 witnesses swore they saw her duplicate at the same time. The phenomenon terrified the students, and eventually, the school dismissed her. The case was later recorded in a spiritualist text, but skeptics dismiss it as folklore. Still, the sheer number of alleged witnesses makes the Sagée doppelganger one of the most famous supernatural double stories ever told. The science behind the doppelganger. Not every double belongs to the supernatural. Some come from the mysteries of the human mind. Neurologists recognize a phenomenon called heutoscopy, a type of out-of-body experience where someone perceives their own duplicate. This strange occurrence is often linked to disturbances in the temporoparietal junction of the brain, the area responsible for processing spatial awareness. People experiencing heutoscopy describe seeing their double standing nearby, sometimes mirroring them, sometimes acting independently. For the experiencer, the vision feels utterly real. And then there's genetics. In 2022, a groundbreaking study in Cell Reports analyzed people who looked almost identical but weren't related. The findings? These twin strangers shared many of the same genes responsible for facial structure, even if their DNA wasn't otherwise closely related. In other words, science shows that our doubles do exist, shaped by random combinations of genes. But while science can explain why lookalikes exist, it doesn't explain the ominous timing, the omens, or why so many double encounters are tied to tragedy. So what do you think? Are doppelgangers just genetic coincidences? Are they tricks of the brain? Or do the eerie stories, from Lincoln's mirror to Shelley's death omen to modern crimes of stolen identities, hint at something more? One thing is certain. Throughout history, those who saw their own double rarely saw it end well. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the creepiest real-life doppelganger cases, make sure to like the video, subscribe for more weird, wild stories, and drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you've ever met your own double or know a story stranger than these, share it. Because in the world of weird and wild stories, sometimes the scariest stranger you'll ever meet is yourself. Until next time, please stay safe out there, and as always, stay curious.